up to speed, up to speed, up to speed.
Duly noted.
Live from the apocalypse, being deeply in love means learning how to eat shit. This is State of the Game. That's real. The people I know who have trouble with relationships basically have trouble eating shit. Right?
Mhm.
They have trouble being like, I can't believe none of my needs were served in this situation. Well, this is love. So
A human centipede in the shape of a heart.
boom. So I am Dano in WNBA terms, which is how I speak. I am the Chelsea Gray of this operation, the point guard. And my co-host is the silent assassin, Nafisha Collier of this situation. K Diggy, thank you for being here.
Yeah, man.
See, I say nice things about you sometimes. I had to walk it back. Last episode, I called him the Dexter of arsonists, that he was burning down arsonists' houses, and it got really weird. So I got to walk it back. So today we have a group. See, this is State of the Game is somewhere where we interview legends, but it's also kind of a community space where we talk to like people who've never gone on podcasts before, or important people, or any levels. It's an open space. So Sankofa, was a rap machine, one of the nicest people, a huge supporter, makes great music constantly, has kind of an invitation once a year to talk about something that's important to him. Because I can't have Kofa on every 2 months or whenever he's releasing.
And I got nothing to say anyway.
Right, it would get weird. Like, hey, back again. So this day you picked this group project, Action Figures of Speech, which is Rap Machine Kofa, Memphis Reigns, who I'm becoming very familiar with as kind of an all-tool player, the glue in the middle, and of course, Mr. Mixelplix himself, or in Star Trek terms, Q. We'd be talking about John Doe, bringing it together.
Q is dope, man.
Thank you for coming here to talk about Action Figures of Speech. It's an incredible cover, so shout out for you that. This is an interesting thing. Can I break down the science first?
Please.
Yep.
My nerd shit, right? This is my nerd shit. Now, Kay, you've listened to Action Figures of Speech. What is the first song where Kofa doesn't lead off?
The Action Figure 4, is it the opener?
No. Kofa leads off Action Figure 4. The first verse, the first voice is Kofa, and his first verse is explaining what Action Figures of Speech is. He gives the names, he gives the backgrounds, he gives the whole template is Action Figure 4. The first song he doesn't lead off is Triple Headed Dragon, number 6. So there's a real sense of Kofa's leadership here of like, I'm going to lay it down, let you know this is what it is, and I'm going to make everyone comfortable by knowing I'm here as the rap machine to make everything solid. I kept thinking of Kofa's position on this as the Bun B of the situation.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also due to the fact that Kofa is the one who actually endeavors to do things that he says he's going to do, which is why he drops 80,000 albums. Like he actually recorded most of the songs first, so that's why he shows up on them first. And we're like, hey, let's get this project done. And we write the project, and then we sit down to actually record. Some of us don't ever get around to that until the last minute, including sending pictures for the album cover or whatever it is that's needed. Kofa is not just the glue; he is the factory, in my opinion.
Right?
Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. It was there for Memphis and John Doe. Was there a Kofa opener that was so intimidating. You were like, "You're next." Like
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
gonna.
I think in general, I mean, both those guys are delivering high caliber raps, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter where they're at, beginning, middle, end. You just want to make sure you bring it with these guys. I highly respect these guys so much, and so just a great opportunity to work with some guys that I started rapping with way back in the '90s, and then finally come together and do this project. So I think just in general, you just don't want to bring a whack verse when you're rapping with these guys. So it was great motivation for this project.
Yeah, and I would say that that is true. Is it the pleasure that I have with writing with Steven in general, and Memphis. This is not the first time we've worked together, obviously, but uh, to answer the question, it's like every time I'm on a track with Steven, I have to think, God, what is a word that Steven's never used? What is a
Right,
phrase? Like,
right.
so I constantly have to like up my pen game. Uh, I'm a de facto like idiot on vocals, and I kind of go all over the place. And it's like I am hyper conscious of the fact that Steven talks the way that he raps. A lot of people don't understand that. Is that some MCs like to use big words. I'm one of those, but I don't always use those words when in my day-to-day conversation. The first time I ever met
Yeah,
Steven, I was like, this dude literally has the largest vocabulary anybody
yeah,
ever met, and he talks using these words like it's off the cuff, no big deal.
yeah. No kidding.
Where it's like, yeah, so for sure, I mean, I reference that in some lyrics when we do songs together. It's like, haha, did I get props from you, Dad? I used a big word there. So,
I I also would say Sankofa has an unfairly cool voice, right? Like if
Absolutely.
my voice was cool like Sankofa's, I would be an asshole. Like it would go to my head. You know what I mean? I couldn't
mhm.
handle the power of it. So yeah, that along with the vocabulary, yeah, he's that's interesting.
Crazy.
So but yeah, and I think by the way, my pick for the best leadoff Kofa verse would be 109876.
Nice.
I think that's just devastation. Uh, but yeah, it's what in terms of Memphis. I want to talk about Memphis for a bit. Break down the members here a little bit. I'm just getting to know Memphis. He's the one I know the least of the three. But first thing I remember when I heard because Kofa put me on to Memphis a while ago. I've been listening to Memphis, but I was like, oh, this guy can kind of do everything, like handling hooks, melody, uh, you know, saying insightful things, saying political things, saying crazy things. Like he's kind of good at all this stuff. So, um, as I listened to the project the first time, I remember thinking Memphis holds the two worlds of John Doe and Kofa together. Because sometimes
Right.
going from Kofa to John Doe can be a jarring experience, in terms of content, right? Like it's such a switch. I think I viewed Memphis as the glue early on, but I think as the album goes on, Memphis gets comfortable being weirder and weirder. There's some interesting choices made that are really cool. Um, I'd be interested to hear more about that.
Yeah, hey, that's kind of interesting, man. Because as I crafted the verses for this album, it was a constant back and forth thinking about what would Sankofa and John Doe do, and then just kind of found a way to put my spin to it. And so, I mean, they just both inspired me. I listened to a bunch of their stuff outside of this project, and so it was just to find a way just to glue with them, like you mentioned too, as well, when I was putting these songs. And so, John, when I'm rhyming with him, I always love his punchlines and his just the impact of the things that he says. And so I try to channel my inner John Doe when I'm putting some verses together. And then when I think Sankofa, when I'm working with him, I'm always thinking like, man, he's always got a crazy delivery in terms of the way that he's spitting these rhymes.
Right.
He can go, double time, triple time. And so I try to incorporate the charismatic aspect too as well. And so, I'm always looking for just the best way to make this sound, flow together well and mesh together well. And so I think you're spot on, man. Because as we were going through the preparation for this interview, I just thought about like how I'll put this how I'll put some of these songs together, and it was channeling both these guys. So just really big inspiration when I was crafting all these verses, all their older stuff, and just thinking about them in general.
But did you get more comfortable as the process went on of like in terms, how did your writing evolve through the project?
I, you know, I'm comfortable with these guys in general,
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
just yeah. So it just again, it's just you just don't want to craft a bad verse when you're working with Sankofa and John Doe. So it was just keeping that in mind. Hey, man, you just got to bring your A game when you're rapping with these guys. And so yeah, it was that not a lot of pressure, but just remembering that hey, you can't put a bad verse on this. And so it was
right.
just
That's
making sure that it was up to par, man. So it was just fun. I mean, both these guys are super easy to work with. They're great people outside of music, and so I mean, the process was just fun. I never felt any pressure, put anything down. It was just again, it was just fun and going back to lyricism and
yeah.
just being creative. So it was great. I enjoyed the process for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening I was listening to like I think it was Hachimura or whatever, the album from 2022 you did with Kofa. So like
Yeah,
there's no new guy in the group. Like that's right. The group is solidified. These are people that know each other, which is awesome. And I think a big
yeah,
part of the success of the project. Um, but yeah, it's good to hear that.
yeah.
John Doe, what do you think Memphis' superpowers are as an MC? How would you describe the strengths?
So I think the energy he brings, first of all, Kofa is like this gruff baritone, right? I'm sort of more like I guess a comic sidekick if I had to put myself in a place, uh, kind of all over the place. But Memph has that energy in his voice every time he raps, and I love that because you can feel how much he's passionate about what he's rapping about. And so it's always fun when he drops a track in the folder and he's written it and then like recorded it and then he added a hook. You're like, oh shit, like here now we know what this song is going to be about in a sense, right? So that's the part I like about his shit, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
yeah,
but the Pony Express, probably like if I had to pick a song that I was like, man, that was it right there. Like
yeah,
Mm,
that's a good call.
when I heard that, I was like, oh, and that's why I was like, this needs to be one of the singles. Like I was like, this hook right here is like simple but perfect. I fucking love it, you know. And I was like, man, it just fits perfectly on the beat. So I think that's definitely one of his strengths and fun
Yeah,
to work with him because of that.
yeah. Someone who knows his vision and sticks with it. I think it's a great way to describe it. And I think you describing your place, John Doe, got me thinking like I would describe it as the X Factor position of the group,
yeah.
right? Like the
Oh
you know
yeah.
the position that old Dirty Bastard played in Wu Tang, right? Of like we don't know what's going to happen when this person shows up, and that makes it fun for people, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
uh, and I to go through the story, I'm very excited to talk to you about this because when I first heard you, and I was doing a write up about one of the black chips, and I was like this guy, it doesn't fit. He's talking about dicks, and Kofa is so like level, and it just doesn't
That's
make
on
sense.
purpose. Oh
And
yeah.
but the more John Doe I listened to, the more dimensions I understood, right?
Yeah.
Of like, there's way more here. And
Mhm.
for me, that old soul on this album, this is my favorite John Doe experience so far that I've had.
Yeah.
This album and that old soul, I just listen to that verse over and over again. You know, the Sisyphus, the sissy waiting at the bus stop. It's there's these humanizing moments of forethought. There's moments of incredible empathy in John Doe verses that come out of nowhere that are like, how could you treat other people like this? And I'm like, this guy just talked about his wiener last song. Like it's incredible. So this was peak X Factor experience for me. Um, Kofa, how would you describe it?
I would say that old soul is probably my favorite cut on the whole album.
Yep.
The album has a whole bunch of different feels to it, but ultimately, to me at least, music has an energy, but the true impact is on how deeply something can resonate with you emotionally. And a track like That Old Soul is like John Doe's role as the court jester, right? Well, the court jester eventually is off the clock, and when he's not attending to the court, he is his own person, and this own person has this life experience, this baggage, this gravitas, this relatability that the court doesn't usually get to see. And when you have a song with a beat from 8 Greg 2 that's already, that soulful and that compelling, and has those undertones of melancholy, and then we all, in our own way, match the beat, it's a beautiful thing, and it's a great opportunity and shows the flexibility of John Doe where he can rap his ass off.
Right.
He can rap about his wiener. He can do whatever. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the court jester has a soul. The makeup comes off, and there is the man behind it all. And so that's like you said, it's a glimpse at the humanity. And that, to me, is incredibly powerful, which is why that's my favorite song on the album.
That's definitely one of the reasons. The other thing, I shout out to 8 Greg too. To me, sometimes there's beats that are not overcomplicated, right? That are straightforward, but there's like an essentialness to them of like those piano tones, like they just resonate. They just resonate from inside out. That beat to me is that's just hip hop. That's a hip hop ass beat. And I love it. And I think that brought a lot of the best out of everybody. But yeah, that one also I want to shout out John Doe on the Secret Arts for just kind of giving this incredible synopsis of what it is to be an artist in this space and break that shit all the way down. Yeah.
And before I forget, shout out to Memphis Reigns for Slick. He was the first one to lay his verse. So I bounced off the energy that he had. He's closing on Arrivederci, so I enter on Sayonara.
Yeah.
And, ultimately, this whole project is about us bouncing off the energy of each other. And we've been at this long enough, and we know each other. We've known each other long enough. I mean, John Doe and I were recording White Collar Criminals not that far away from where Memphis Reigns was living. And we only find out about this decades later.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Memphis, how did you feel about, like, you talked a little bit about John Doe and about like going, the excitement of catching up to some of that madness. How do you view his performance on this project? What do you view his strengths as an MC?
Yeah, his ability to drive emotion is phenomenal. So John Doe, when I listen to him, this is inside and outside of this project. He's one of those dudes, like every time he says something crazy, I'm like, God damn, this dude is fucking unbelievable. Like he has those lines that you have to play back several times because they're so dope. And like, did you just catch what he said? And so, just his ability to drive emotion is fantastic. Like you'll never expect, where he's coming. He's hitting you at different angles. And aside from having like an absolutely charismatic delivery, just the way that he delivers punchlines is phenomenal. So that's why it's just, man, you just have to bring it with this guy. And so that's what I really enjoy from John Doe the most is his charisma on the microphone and just the way that he delivers punchlines. He sets them up really well, and then it's double the impact when he delivers them. It's the best.
Good deal. Yeah. So, okay, one of the things in the breakdown we discussed was how when you have two people in a group, two MCs in a group, they get to bounce off ideas, they get split verses. It's a good time. When you get more than two, there becomes logistical shifting that has to happen, right?
Absolutely.
How did you feel about the cohesion here in Action Figures of Speech?
I mean, it really felt like a I mean, it really felt like a comic book movie to me in a lot of ways, in terms of like the chemistry that all three of them had with each other. Uh, I think like when you have three people that like the dynamic, it allows for like a versatility in terms of dynamic on each song, you know, because I think like you said, like one person brings a certain element that brings out another element in another rapper, and then another, like they each bring out different elements on of each other. So yeah, I mean, I mean, I think once you get the chemistry down, like three people is like a good dynamic, music wise, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, well, first I would say three distinct voices, right?
Yeah,
So like there's no being like, was that Sankofa or was that, Memphis? Like you
Yeah.
know who's who from just voices alone. And then I think everybody has moments where their personality shines through.
Yeah.
The one I was thinking of was Memphis ends the is it front runners with the baby eating thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like ended laughing to himself and just that moment is really endearing because it's like we're pushing as far as we can on this and we're having a ball. How was that? You know what I mean? Like it's a real check-in with the audience. I think it's really cool. Uh, and everybody has those kind of moments. So yeah. Would yeah, John Doe, can you remember? Are there any moments on here that were like, one of the favorite things I've done. I really like this.
Mm. Um, I mean, I really actually like Old Soul.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and and forgive me, I had I had to pull up the name conventions for this album because these were named something different when we were
Yeah.
making the album. And so it's like, what is that called
That's
now?
right.
So like, you're like,
That's
I'm
right.
like, oh shit, okay, I know what that is because I think of these songs, and in terms of what the beat was called, you know. So then I'm like,
Right, right,
oh,
right.
okay, now I remember what I was talking about, like there, you know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think, man, that song hits, but to me, it's like the overall balance that is more impactful to me than any one moment. Like
Mm.
I write purposefully uh, to offset Steven, right? So like there's this thing called the Tom rule where it's like I had Steven wants me on albums, and there's nothing greater than knowing that somebody wants to get your stuff out there, you know. And part of that is that I like then also knowing that there's a very specific rules that Steven adheres to when he's rapping. Um, so then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna offset everything that you plan to do in your stuff because I know I'm not gonna out rap you. I'm
Right.
gonna, you know, make it different. And that is both in terms of like the crazy sophomore humor that I employ, you know, like because I that really is just something that's like used to offset the moments where then I feel like I can come in and say something that actually matters or have a line that to me, you know,
Mm.
hits hard enough that I'm like, man, that was fucking dope, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. And this album isn't just bars, right? So there's topical stuff, depending on who wrote first to the song,
Yeah.
regardless of the order that it was recorded. Somebody was like, this beat speaks to me and I'm gonna write something that matters, you know?
Right.
Um, so like Torno was a joint that I was like, hold on, I gotta tell you what Torno was. So Parasitic Paradise, right? So
Yeah.
like like I have very strong feelings about religion and politics and how they're intermeshed in the most unhealthy and unholy of ways in America. Um, and you know, like that weird mix where you have capitalism and Christianity, and somehow people believe that they work together when they're actually, opposites. And so like when we have songs like that, I'm like, yeah, I'm all in on this, And so then that's when you can feel like I'm not talking about my cock or shit or pissing in somebody's mouth. Like that, these songs like end up being very specific, and so that's why that song and that old soul, like I feel like those are just all about that part of me, the part that actually thinks, because I'm not, like to Steven's point, I'm not just the court jester existed for a reason, right? He existed to tell truths to the king. He did it in a way that was like silly so everybody could laugh, but he was the one person who was allowed to tell the king, hey, dude, you're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean?
Right.
And get away. So,
That's that's a great point, great description. And an element of the success of this, right, Kay, is like our and the downfall of, like, I was a huge Slaughterhouse guy. I was a big Slaughterhouse guy when they happened. And I went to see them live, but they never really got to a place where they were making songs, right? They were always just barring out, and you guys are making songs, right? And this isn't like saying 1v1 better than Slaughterhouse. Is just as examples, right? Like some people get together and they bar out, and they'll make an album where they're barring out. But it's not, once you do 2, 3 albums, your people are like, why do I need album number 3 versus number 1? Right? Because there's nothing different being said. Whereas here, since you're actually talking about things and talking about them together, these are discussions that evolve,
Yeah.
and that's really dope.
I mean, I think with any group, rap group, you need a good, strong organizer, and you need structure. You definitely need structure, because if you don't have an organizer and a structure, a creative structure being implemented, it just leads to a lack of focus.
And well, and what, being a creative person, Kale, I can tell you, the one of the best things about having structure as a writer or a creator is having an opponent. Because the structure, when you set a structure, a creative mind is going to try and destroy the structure. Like, that's going to be our natural next move, is like, okay, you said I can't do this. Let's see how close I can get to doing it, right? So if you don't have a structure, you don't have anything to fight against, you're kind of just swimming around. But having structure and having room to challenge it, having room to play is important. Does that make sense, Kofa?
Oh, it makes absolute sense. I mean, I'm thinking about when I was rushing my fraternity, right? And like we were like the unfraternity or whatever, like as a bunch of goofballs. But on Hell Day, like when we went to Hell Day, I'm like, okay, I'm operating within your structure. You're the ones who have the power. You're the ones who's setting this up, and you're putting us through all these awful endeavors. Well, my thing was, I'm going to go so gung ho on these awful endeavors. I'm going to make you feel bad that you're putting me through this. So I'm going to flip the power structure on you exactly like that. And I feel the same way, within rap. Once I understand the structures, I then have the freedom that I can play within there. Mm-hmm. So having the structure, I love that. Like Memphis Reigns comes to me with a concept joint, I'm like, sweet. I can write 16 bars focused on this. Like I can rap whatever. I got tons of unused notebooks full of raps I'll never use. Right. But when it comes to actually flipping something, like John Doe was saying, like when he focuses in on a concept or something of meaning, something that matters to him, like he's the one who kept coming up to me with concept songs. Like, I want a concept song. I want a concept song. And I understand why he wants a concept song, because if we don't go with concept songs, then we're going to get all these schlong songs and everything else that goes in the mix. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's to be expected.
Thank you.
and people know who've been listening to my music long enough, like I'm not going to be cussing on my songs, but there's going to be this song with John Doe, and I don't know which way it's going to go, but it's going that way. And there's only like 1 or 2 times I've vetoed something, and he has been gracious enough to adjust his verse.
Shout out to, I did not hear, but one of my favorite playing with Kofa on his own songs was G-Fam Black saying that he was, don't tell Kofa, but I'm doing cocaine off the Kofa card. I thought that was awesome. That was so like because you're right. That's such a G fan black moment.
Oh,
Like, that's
absolutely.
him. That's so him. And him playing with you, and it was just that's beautiful. Yeah, everybody
Yeah,
getting a chance to be who they are.
dude is as dope as he is prolific. He's like
Yeah.
the party arty of this era.
He's fantastic. So I would say the so the person who creates the song has an idea, right? John Doe with just laid out with his the second person who comes in, it's a bit of a prompt, right? Like they're taking it on as a bit of a prompt in the prompt universe. And the worst thing you can do to a prompt is lean into it too snugly, you know? Like you kind of have to challenge the preconception of how you're going to react to the prompt, right? And but you also have to keep in mind the totality of what you want to do, right? Of what where you're going to leave the next person, how this is going to come together as a cohesive thing, what the first person had in mind. There's like an artistic intelligence to understanding what that person was talking about. Um, yeah. So coming in, Kofa, when you come in after like John Doe explaining religion and all that, how do you jump into the prompt and make it yours?
Well, I mean, it's the same way where when I get beats, I am open to whatever that moment may be. And it's the same way to be in life, like trying to be flexible in life and being able to be adaptable. Moving from the States or moving from Australia to the States, I had to be adaptable. Listening to a beat, I have to be adaptable. I can't force myself upon that particular beat. Same way that if someone comes to me with a song, John Doe already has his verse, Memphis Reigns already has his verse. It is up to me to reflect in the way that I best can that energy while still being myself. Because, I mean, I can't rap like John Doe. John Doe's cartoonish elasticity of words, and I'm not even talking about the particular words he's using. I'm talking about the way and the musicality in which his delivery works. I can't do that. I love it. I admire the hell out of it. I can't do it. So I got to be myself. But if he has an idea, I can glean the feelings and the ideas from that and reflect that accordingly in my piece. Because ultimately, this is a group project. And like you said, this is not Slaughterhouse where we're trying to like out rap each other. Because what's the point of that, man? I'm here to do dope stuff with my friends, and we're doing that.
Right. Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Memphis, how do you come in after something that is someone lays a concept that's so their own and it's so well realized and now you have to follow what how do you go about building that response?
Yeah, I think it's similar in the sense that Kofa mentioned. But what I do definitely do is I sit down and I listen to the verse carefully, right? And so I don't try to mimic it exactly, but like you mentioned, I'll take that verse, I'll listen to it, and try to understand what that person is saying or the concept that he's trying to capture. And then I find a way to deliver it in my own. Okay, I got it. He wants to talk about religion. All right, let me talk about it in my own way, but not at the same perspective. So I'll try to hit it from a different angle. So I'll let the verse guide me in terms of topic, but then I will interpret it the way that the beat drives me to. So I definitely use that to lay it down as the foundation so that it's not too offset. But again, just I'll take what they wrote and then I use that and just put my spin on it. So and that's what I like, right? So it just depends on who starts the song, and so that's why I like it. One person didn't start every song, and so I just love that variety that each person brings. But it's great, man. All those different perspectives all into one, and it meshes really well.
Yeah. I don't want to make this sound too studious, John Doe. Like this is
No,
just great.
that's part of what I was gonna say is that like you're forcing us to think about something that we don't
Yeah,
think about. In that sense,
yeah,
like as a writer, and a fan of hip hop in that sense, like you don't really like consciously think of that part of it, right? It's like you
yeah,
get something, you're like, okay, I got it. I'm flowing off of this in whatever manner, whether it's like, you know, rhyming off of the same rhymes that somebody delivered, like, or if it's topically, sticking to like that thematically and making it your own, taking your own twist or your own perspective on that topic.
yeah,
Um, that happens just almost naturally, right? So it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, he's talking about this, and I like it. It just, but I don't like the way you're breaking it down is like, tell me exactly what this process is in your head, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
I don't want to.
interesting because you force it. No, no, I think it's dope. I
Yeah,
love that part of it.
I agree.
I think about like when Busta Rhymes talks about how he writes to beats. Sometimes it's funny because he doesn't say a fucking thing if you ever listen to it,
Mm,
but his strength is so much about like the way that he rides the beat. You know what I mean?
yep.
Um,
Yeah,
and when he talk, you see videos where he's like, "Oh man, I took this beat and I really had to like go each breakdown because Dilla made every 6 bars or whatever different.
Right.
And it's like now that is like really like putting like I have to stick to this thing. And sometimes if we're doing like um a song that's more about showing them that versatility, the vocal versatility, like triple timing, or when sometimes there's songs that are like um 5/8 versus 4/4, that type of stuff where you're like, okay, now I gotta get a very specific pattern to my delivery. That's
Mm,
that's when I'm consciously thinking about it. But
yeah.
I mean, it's a dope question to ask because you do have to be like, oh,
yeah,
it's an automated process. Like it's sort of like I'm
yeah.
breathing. Well, how do you breathe? Like what is it that you do
Right.
to make
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
breathe? You know what I mean?
That's it.
Like,
And
That's a
that's why I
great point.
wanted to kind of make it or a little more organic and reframe because I think people who don't do creative stuff like and they just take it in sometimes will be like, how do you do this or how do you get this done? And I guess in terms of writing off that prompt, like, and the way we're all describing it, like, let's say you have a conversation, you got one of those late night conversations with someone you trust, I'm sitting down with Kay, and I'm like, yo, here, let me tell you a story about a moment where I did something really embarrassing in front of people you really shouldn't do that in front of. And I tell the story, and it's eloquent, and he laughs. But now he's thinking about his story where that happened to him. And now
mhm.
he's like, oh, that reminds me, boom, boom. And 45 minutes later, we've created something different between our two shared experiences. This is
Yes.
just the literary version of that. This is just the creative version of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, because it's captured, right? So that's the difference. Is like you're living in that moment as it
Yep.
unfolds. And you'll remember that conversation that you and Kay had. Like you could be 20 years down the line, you'd be like, man, that one time we were talking about, our siblings or whatever it was. You know what I mean? The difference for us is that we record it. It's now it's tangible.
Yeah.
And then it's somebody's going to listen to it who's not us and be able to dissect it, right? That's the beauty of art is like anybody can listen to anything or read anything and interpret it in their own frame of reference, right? Because you're going to apply your life experience and everything that's inside of you to this piece of art. And so, like, you're going to look at that dot on the wall and say, that's a fucking, you know, goal that I'll never achieve because it's a dot. And then somebody else will say, no, that is reflective of nothingness because, like, and whatever it is,
Right.
it's the same thing with listening to music and the difference between having a conversation just unfold, right? And then be like, damn, we just had a conversation, which is that human connection that is so important to everybody. Whereas we're actually recording that conversation, putting it down and
Yep.
releasing it for people to interpret it themselves.
Yeah. And Memphis, you ever see like sometimes there's an album that comes out and it's a rap group and it's awesome and you love it and then so you're looking for interviews with the people and when they're interviewed they're like I can't even describe this. It was just too easy. Right? We just
Hmm.
locked in and it was too easy. And so that's an element of this sometimes that happens where you're like these people were kind of meant for each other artistically and they just have chemistry, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And,
that is
and
definitely another.
Yeah, and that chemistry, like this was your original point too, is like each of us is different enough, right? Our voice is different, our delivery is different, our cadence is different, and
Yeah.
it makes it not just the same thing over. I think that was one of the weak points with what do you call it? Sorry, I already forgot. Slaughterhouse, right? Is it they all
Yeah.
sounded almost the same. And that was the problem for them, is it was like, we are all the exact same rapper, let's all make a song. And so then you're just listening to four verses of the same rapper. Whereas like with this, and I'm not saying, again, to your point, we're not better than these. I love Slaughterhouse, dude.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like each of our voices and our tones are different and unique. And that's what I think that makes it like fun to listen to, because you're like, okay, okay, okay. I didn't just hear the same guy three times. It was totally different.
Hey, but you know, that's a great point though, because I know you and Kofa have been rhyming together for a long time. So I did think about that too when I first started doing music with you guys. It was like, how was I gonna mesh with you guys? I could just imagine, you know, if I hear Sankofa, I mean, I can place John Doe together, and it sounds right. So that was something I did think about too as well. Was like, how could I integrate myself just so that we come out with something very nice and flowing? But that's a great point, and I love, just like you mentioned, just talking about the process, because I don't ever think about it. So it's awesome that you surface these thoughts. I appreciate it.
And for those like who are on the periphery of the SHU, the Sankofa hip hop universe, uh, you may not know.
I love, I
You may
love it.
not know that about the
Oh, man.
Silversmiths are a big part of this, right? The Silversmiths
Yeah,
with John Doe and Kofa. So anybody who's like getting into action figures of speech because of the hot streak Kofa's on, and is like, what would it be like to just have John Doe and Kofa? That's you're jumping into the SHU. You're you got the Silversmiths catalog to jump into.
Oh, man.
The SHU, bro.
Yeah.
What's crazy is like,
the multiverse. I love it.
yeah, Tali Rodriguez, incredible producer,
Yep.
great friend, engineer, rapper, all the above, multi-instrumentalist. Like, he does most of my engineering, right? So I have a Google Doc for him, and it's like, I think it's called the Tali Extended Universe
Yep.
of
Yep.
Engineering. And so it's got my whole list of things for him. And, Chef Mike, who does a lot of my graphics, I have the same Google Doc for him. Like, here are upcoming projects. Here's what I want you to complete on those things. And so, like, this whole extended universe, yeah, it makes sense.
Yep. And that's why I've never put a pitch into a breakdown before, but I did on this one. And I actually just said, look, as organized as you've got everything, Kofa, and it was, you know what? This is gonna be the biggest compliment I've ever paid you, Kofa. Um, there's times where it reminds me of Scorsese. Like Scorsese, who, uh passed away. He's from Philly. He he had just done the Nation Gang collective album. Jason Griff, all
Mhm.
that, Insubordinate Records, and everyone that I talked to who had worked with Scorsese
Yeah.
was like, that guy put the battery in my back. That guy rapped his ass off whenever. Like that guy actively made me better and made me more focused, right? So that's the kind of things I hear from people around you, right? And I was like, that guy should have a label. He should just run a label and be able to kind of maneuver people through that, have a system for what you're doing. You wouldn't be doing anything different. You would just have a legal network to keep doing what you're doing. But that's my
It's a
pitch.
fascinating concept.
Yeah, man.
I'll admit you're not the first person to tell me this. And I
Because
told the other person, if I could just stop rapping, it would be a whole lot easier to do that.
and I was in a hip hop Discord, and they said, and I said, hey, I'm about to talk to Action for Your Speech. Drop the link. And they were like, we never talk about Kofa as somebody who's releasing too much music. We always to bang on like Boldy James for releasing too much music. But we never do that with Kofa. And I said, the reason we don't is because, and I still think you're releasing too much music. I'll be on record.
No, it's cool.
But the reason we don't give you as much flack is because you are so good at the communicative network of your music, right? You don't just let people know it's coming up. You let people know what is out now, right? Like right now, you can get this. In future, this is what's coming up next. On the
Mhm.
horizon is this, right? Here's the merch, the newsletter's popping. Like you have a way of you understand the responsibility of constant communication.
Well, I mean, there's making dope music, and then there's the responsibility I feel working with my friends to make sure that I give that music the best opportunity possible to reach people. I mean, no diss to my John Doe, like that's my man. I love you. But do you know how many albums this guy has that he has not released?
Yeah.
Like shout out to Addy for making the Tom rule to make sure that like even if we don't drop Silversmith's albums, there's at least an album worth of John Doe material every year on features on his albums I drop each year. Like I feel an obligation to let people know how dope Athena is, how dope
Yeah, hell
John
yeah.
Doe is. You know,
Hell
these
yeah.
people who otherwise, without me being there, are like super dope and just like way off the radar. I'm not saying I have the ability to put people on the radar, but
Yeah.
I'm going to do my damnedest with my friends to see that people have an opportunity to understand, man, John Doe is crazily dope. And I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
Memphis Reigns, like, you don't need that, man. You do that yourself. But
Right.
like Athena, like I'll reach out to her, like, I'm working on a new project. Tell me if you dig one of these beats. Do the same thing with John Doe, because that's how dope my friends are.
Hell
Right.
yeah.
That's the reason why we are here today. I'm not coming on to talk about a solo project. I hate talking about myself.
Yeah.
I want to talk about my friends. I want my friends to get the recognition because without them, I can't do this. We haven't really even talked that much about 8 Greg 2, whose beats are preposterous. We started
Yeah.
this album before 5 Mugs of Doom, and I was busting his chops for like 3 years before that. Like, dude, get me beats. Just stretch them out the loops. Our album was going to be called Loops on Top of Loops because I was just getting send me like 3-4 minutes worth of loops, and I was going to rap on those. And
Yeah.
now, like, we're working on the second, Action Figures of Speech album.
Yeah.
And the
Hey,
first song we did, Memphis Reigns dropped the first verse, and the way that the beat is, it's soulful like that old soul. And that means the world to me to be able to reflect that with my friends. And I reached out to my man Addy. I'm like, dude, we got an album title. You're going to be perfect for the artwork. And like, again, that opportunity to do things with friends. And the plan is next year, we have another one of these.
yes,
Right.
sir.
Right.
The figures of speech, and I'm not going to tell you the album title yet, but you guys are listening enough, and it's going to be
Yeah.
super dope. And it's all friends working together. And the backdrop that Greg lays on this stuff, the way that he is able to take the samples and segue, like I had copies of the record early to a record store here, Welcome Back Records. Shout out to Morrison. And one of the dudes working
yeah.
there is a music file, but they were playing it on Record Store Day. And the guy, when I came to pick up the copies that hadn't sold, he's like, I was listening to this and I couldn't recognize a single sample. So I had to tell my man, Greg. But the way that Greg takes things, like his stuff is so dope that it can stand alone. But we have the opportunity to work on top of that and work with that. And his stuff, he makes banging, dope, crazy beats. And his skill that he has is so subtle that if you're not paying attention, you're just like, that's a beat. No, man. That's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
We just get the honor and privilege of being able to rap on top of that stuff. And I get to do it with my man, John Doe, who I moved out to California with. And he had all those Lamb Theory books with all the like front covers ripped off. And we get to work with Memphis Reigns, who I was jealous of back when because he was getting props for Scorpion Circles back in the Hip Hop Infinity days. And here we are, dope friends working on things together. And that's what brings me joy. That's what excites me, is why we are here together.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Great point. Hey, gents, I apologize. I got to get ready to fall off, but man, I just wanted to just echo everything that Sankofa said. It's been truly just an honor to work with these guys, man. And so I think too is I knew about these guys in the '90s, and just again thought so highly of them. And for me, just to be doing music with them 20 years later has always been a trip. And I love the Tom rule too, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because I'm always like, where's John Doe's solo album, man? And so, I love it, man. I'm just a big fan of these guys. So again, I apologize for falling off. I'm gonna get fired as a dad if I don't take off, but
no, go for
I appreciate,
it, man.
I appreciate you, man. And so hey, thanks again. But yeah, man, I love these guys, man. So I'll see you guys soon, man. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Yep.
So
Yeah.
Kay,
Okay.
tell me about how would you characterize the production 8 Greg 2? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like for me, I like when everything, and it goes back to organizing. I like when everything lines up. So when I look at the cover, I get like a very comic book feeling uh, when I look at the cover. And then when you listen to the music, it kind of reminds me of like a comic book, in terms of the production. I think it really fits. Everything is in sync. Like I think the artwork is in sync. Ooh. The artwork is in sync with the music, which has like there's a lot of energy to it.
Yeah, this is a big thing for Kay. He does not like when an album sells itself as something and then isn't that thing.
Yeah,
And so that is a compliment of like, Kay saw that cover, pressed play, and the album gave him what the cover showed.
cover
Yeah,
communicate right.
that's really dope. For me, I guess what I would say, Kay, I'm really interested, and John, I'm really interested what your thoughts. I'm really interested in who gets genius cred, right? Like who gets like in acting or any facet of life, right? And producers, I think the producers that get genius cred. I was talking to my wife about this with Ant. Ant released a new album with Brother Ali, and I was like, Ant doesn't really get genius cred in the circles like other producers do because he doesn't overstuff beats. He's incredibly efficient, right? He's like, here's what it is, boom, 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 and so you may never call Ant a genius, but you've heard the songs thousands of times, right? Like that's 8 Greg 2 for me. Like you may not stop the track and be like, what a brilliant person, but you've now heard it 7, 8 times, you know?
Mhm.
And you it takes a while for the value of that to sink in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I think like to your point, like one of the strengths of AMP stuff is like he's able to pare it back. He understands what he's doing, right? It's not like if he's an instrumentalist, that's different because then you get to go explore these different territories. But you have to understand that there's this balance between the vocals and the beats, right? So he's able to do that. And I think one of the things that Greg's really good at is these slow beats, but they have this tumble, this cadence to them. It's like you're here and it's like you're in a crowd and everybody's pushing you forward. That's what the beat is doing. Like Greg's beats, like he tends to make really slow beats, which I don't have a problem with. I love it. But all of them have like this momentum to them that you can't, it's like undeniable, right? And so it's
Yeah.
like you're slowly just tumbling along like sort of rocks at the bottom of a riverbed. You're just like, what is happening? I just realized I'm at the end of the song because that momentum is intrinsic to his production. I think that's one of the pieces that people don't talk about enough is how do you make a beat that still has like what feels like upbeat cadence to it, even though it's 80 beats per minute, like
Right.
so that you're not falling asleep to the beat. And I love that about his production. And when he's
Yeah.
posting their little snippets, I'm like, dude, done this one too. You fucking asshole.
Right. Just people have started arguing online about BPMs, right? This is at some BPM. I can't, I need this at so BPM. And I'm like, just because it's at that BPM doesn't mean you'll feel the momentum you need to feel, right? Like
Mhm.
it's more than that. It's more than just the literal speed, And so 8 Greg 2 can keep momentum going at BPMs that are known for not having momentum. Like, yeah. So
Yeah, it's that weird. Listen, it's that place. If you've ever ridden a horse, it's like when a horse goes from trot to a gallop, it's kind of uncomfortable as a rider because you're like, wait, what are you doing now? Oh shit. And here I am. And all of a sudden you're like, oh
yep.
fuck, I'm in the groove, right? And I think that is an unspoken talent for producers to find that groove in the slower beat because you're like, hey, what? Oh, okay, I'm in here. And as a writer, nothing better than finding the pocket, right? Because then you're like, okay, I know exactly where my vocals are dropping, and then it's just a matter of filling that space.
That's awesome.
And it makes it easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is great description. Kay, do you have any runs on this that you're into?
Yeah, I love the ending of the album. To me, I think like had that what's been said before. That Old Soul is my favorite
Yep.
song on the album. So I think Parasitic Paradise, That Old Soul, Pony Express.
That's it. I mean, that was the first thing I was gonna say. That's the run. And it's so interesting to have like we talk about great runs in albums. We rarely talk about 10, 11, 12 runs, right? Like that's really dope. And really special to have that. Um, oh man, there's so many and there's so much great stuff in the middle. Mothra Visions is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I still love the 1, 2, 3 action figure 4 secret arts flagpole runners. Um, but yeah, ultimately it's 10, 11, 12, exactly what you said, Kay. That would be my pick. Um, do you guys have any runs of songs that are your favorite?
I wasn't thinking of particular runs, but one of the things, like, and this goes back to something we'd been discussing earlier, is the way that we are different yet work together is evident when you listen. Like, I was listening to the album on this morning's run. So I'm running out in the snow, come back, listening to it. And like, I had to listen to Action Figure 4 a couple times to confirm that there was no hook on there.
Right.
Because we go from rapper to rapper to rapper, but it never feels like this droning on rapper, rapping stuff. And I'm like, wait a second, what do you mean there's no hook on there? And for us to be able to have that chemistry to bounce from one to the other to the next one, like that's super dope to me. I love hooks. I think more songs should have hooks. One of the deals I made with 8 Greg too for 5 Monks of Doom is every song was going to have a hook. This one didn't always need them.
No, it didn't. And part of that is how well the beats transition into each other and how they surprise you and how the voices kind of wrap around concepts. Like we talked about this with Dose One and Steel Tip Dove about how like because Dose One is a great example, right? He doesn't do hooks on that new album, All Portrait No Chorus, but he's such an entertainer that he's always speaking to you as as the showman, right? And so this album does that a lot of like it does keep you guys present with each other in those moments speaking to us. So yeah, it doesn't always need those hooks because you understand the audience is right there and you're performing to them. But yeah, and Kay, I was gonna say I'm glad that Kofa mentioned that there's going to be another one of these.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't feel like a one-off to me. This is a project, and partially because I think of how much Memphis adds to the mix of you and Kofa. As versatile as Memphis is, it's just it adds an entirely new dimension that I would like more of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely room for growth and room for exploration for all the parties involved, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's what's exciting about a follow-up project is that you get to then like the first one, you're like, okay, where's my space? What's my niche in this group? You know, and then
Right.
I think like as you get to the next project, you're more comfortable with working with each other. You understand how each of us like works, and then like ideally, like it becomes even a better thing. So I'm excited to see what comes out of it. Based on the first song we wrote, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah. And
it's gonna be
that's
good.
what I love. What I love about the comic book element is that, like they can make Avengers movies forever because like the next every movie is a specific adventure.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's how kind of how I view the albums. Like every album is an adventure that you guys do, and it'll be interesting to see what comes next.
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna be dope.
Tones.
We just gotta keep Greg sending us beats, man. Because like I'm just eager. Like I got so many projects I'm working on right now, and I'm like, man, I want to do more of this.
Right. It is 8-2 Greg is going to be is going to be a really important part of that because you're going to have to find a new tone for that new album, right? And like
Yep.
that's going to be based on what hits your inbox. You're here, you're going to know, oh, this is the tone of the next day.
Yeah, man.
So that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Kay, I'm always so fucking excited to have these nerdy process conversations. You know what I mean? Like this is not one of those like hangout crack jokes. Like we do crack jokes, but it's not just a hang sesh pod. Um, it's we do talk process, and that's cool. And I always learn from everybody, man. It's so great. Uh, do you have any other questions, Kay? Or are you ready to go?
No.
Let's go to recommendation corner. The first one, I was talking about this before we got on, and I hope Kay has heard it because I texted him yesterday about it. Mariba, The Breeze Grew a Fire. I love this fucking album on first listen. Just it definitely R&B, but it's R&B at this kind of really at a slower kind of almost metaphysical exploration pace. It's really dope. Yeah, it's sparkly and it's beautiful. That's how I'd say it. Um, the other one, we should go with big names here, but I'll go with I'm gonna go with Sacco and Vanzetti. Sorry for your loss.
Yes.
Sacco and Vanzetti have been working a long time. I really debated on having them on because they had a 3-disc album last year that was really fucking good. This one, in my mind, is better. It's so zoned in on loss, but it's still assertive, badass hip hop,
Yeah.
and it has the most jarring song about ducks that you'll ever hear in your life.
Yeah, man. That's like the John Doe song about ducks.
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't even want to imagine.
You have been warned.
Okay,
But I mean, it all serves the purpose, though.
it definitely does. It's just like it's you know how like your problem with dolphins, it's like that
Yeah, I that's why.
with ducks.
You have been warned, Mr. Deegan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So but it's a hell of a project. And Sko is so I don't know, Sko's such a real person. You know,
Yeah,
like it's when you spend a lot of time with an MC on a rap album. And that's why we hate rappers so much, right? That we hate because we just don't want to hang out with them on some level, right? Like, dude, I've got nothing. There's nothing Big Sean's ever done that's made me think he's a bad person. I just don't want to be around that motherfucker, you know.
Look at poor Big Sean catching heat everywhere.
This is my shit. So, I guess I could have gone Tyga, but that's too safe. But yeah,
He's easy to hate.
yeah, I mean that's
There's a
acceptable.
difference.
But yeah, holy shit. And I'm super hyped for February 21st. Teller Banks and Wino Willie have a project coming out
Wow.
called Black Man. There's 4 singles out now. Crazy. They are amazing. Teller is one of those MCs that like lives in the beat, you know? So the better the producer is, the better he is, you know? It's almost a Venom symbiote thing, right? And so Wino Willie just gave him a set that just set him off. And I can't wait for that. I'm highly anticipating that. So I'll go those 3. Kofa, what are you listening to?
When I'm not listening to podcasts or beat packs, because I just got a beat pack from someone that's like 400 beats. And I'm Sacco and Vanzetti. Sorry for your loss. Of course, I'm still mad on their behalf that, you know, Behemoth didn't get on best of year list, end of year list last year.
Incredible.
And it's got nothing to do with me being on the album. I mean, I was honored to be on the album, but as amazing, as incredible as it was an undertaking, like the way that Sko has managed to encapsulate the dread of living in these times,
Yep.
but not giving up. It's like fight music for the apocalypse.
You know, fight music for thoughtful people, right? Like,
yeah.
No, I'm with you.
It's like, you know, if there were more people like him, I would have more confidence in the future of our nation type stuff. But listening to that, Chairman Chow dropped Loop Dog Volume 2, just these, just like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 minutes worth of these loops. And that was crazy. Emptying the dishwasher, like writing all these snippets, like, one day I'll be working with you, dude. And Iron Mike Sharp dropped IMS Live 1 and IMS Live 2. And IMS Live 1 has stuff on there. Like, he took the Walking Dead theme, put some drums on it. Man, that's the most badass addition of drums since Stoop laid drums on that Zales Diamond commercial. I was like, oh, wow. Now I actually think this is dope.
That's awesome.
And beyond that, just like I said, listen to a ton of beats and working on a ton of projects.
That's awesome. John Doe, what are you rocking with?
So I was thinking about some of the stuff. I think the whole album that I'm rocking with it most recently was Pigeon John's Hello Revelation. He's not for everybody, but I love the way Pigeon John harmonizes. I was a Prince fan growing up, and I think Pigeon John is the closest to that for his hooks. I know he sings a lot more now than he raps, but I'm never mad at it. So, and I love his perspective. He's got a funny take on things. So that album I really enjoyed. Outside of that, I just have been getting into Norman Sand, and I'm still like trying to decide. Like this guy, I don't know if you've heard him, but he is kind of does a lot of. It's a commercially sounding output that he has, and he's put out probably like 3 or 4 albums. But what he does vocally is he's all over the place. He likes to play with stuff and play with words, play with delivery. Sometimes it's too much, I'll be honest, but it's like there's enough good stuff in there that I'm like, this is somebody who is willing to push the boundaries, and I'm happy. I'm happy for that. And then the other one, this is like super basic, but J-Zack, I really love everything he does, but I need him to do a real album. Like his stuff is mostly just like freestyles here and there. You know, he's sort of in that initial locksmith phase still, where he just let me drop this freestyle, and then I don't know what my album is going to be yet. You know, but I know it's going to be good in the sense that like what he writes for his verses and his freestyles are so dope that you can tell he's able to write something good, which is what happens when you get a full album from Locksmith. So those are the three.
Awesome. My favorite Locksmith is always the No Question with Apollo Brown.
Yeah, that was dope. Man, it's hard for me to pick a favorite. And I'll be honest, when I was picking these guys, some of it was like, what is a modern people who are making modern sounding hip hop? They're still dope. Like, I'll be fair. Like, if you're not into the modern sound, you might not like some of the stuff that these people are putting out. But I love that they are like, let me still say something. Let me still show you that bars matter, and let me show you that there's, you know, topically things that you can talk about other than the de facto, like, you know,
right
the garbage that we hear. You know, like what we loved about hip hop and our hip hop in the first place. You know, like when there was always garbage rap out there, but like that difference between like, you know, that grimy like for hip hop and these guys have a sound that's more modern, but they actually say stuff, and that's what I like about them. So
yeah, I think in the early stages of hip hop, if you were known as important, you were held to a standard to talk about things that are important, right? Like it had to be, there had to be discussions beyond just, the basics. So, Kay, what are you rocking with? What are you bumping?
Nothing new this week, but you guys gave me a few recommendations I'm gonna check out for sure.
I gotta tap Kofa for one more thing before I let you go. I consider Kofa a super fan of State of the Game. I appreciate you for that. If you were giving people who are like new and had just gone on to State of the Game, what would you give them for a backpack of your favorite older episodes?
Oh man, dude, I can't remember my own songs. How am I supposed to remember?
That's fair. That's fair.
I would just honestly, I came to you and I started supporting your stuff because of your written work. And it was only after I was following your written work for like a few months, I was like, oh, there's a podcast too? And so you can't go wrong going in. I mean, you are this Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades, and K Diggy riding, shotgun, whatever. And the way that you manage to adjust your energy and come with your preparedness to talk to whomever you talk to, it's always interesting. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. You be talking to someone I don't even like, and I'll be listening to it because of the way that you make things fascinating. So I would say this. I already told you I can't tell you a specific episode, but I'm telling people tap in because there's always something interesting. And it's not just the live from the apocalypse, this is the this, Hey Diggy is the that, that's a bonus. It's like Crate 808's least hip hop thing, it's your jump off point. Yep. That's always dope. But there's always going to be a way that you approach things to bring the people that you bring on to say the things they say where it's worth time, man.
Yep.
Use that time. I'm old, man. I use my time wisely, and this is one of the ways I use my time.
That's for real. We got Kay. We've now got two artists who have 2 episodes in the top 10 of our listened episodes. Elucid has 2, and Lone Sword has 2.
Wow,
that's pretty dope, man. That's pretty cool. So, shout out to people supporting, and that's the dream, Kobe, because my tastes are all over the fucking place, right? So I always I hope they'll give it a shot. Even if you don't know it, give it a shot, because some of the stuff is great, so we'll see as that evolves, man. But and people, the benefit is people reaching out and being like, I listened to that because of that. It was crazy. And I'm like, perfect. That's what we do here. Yeah. Thank you for taking your time to be with us. This was awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey, shout out to my wife for running coverage as far as parenting goes so I could do this.
Who do you, Kofa, who do you want to produce a John Doe solo album? Who do you want?
Steel Tip Dove or The Alchemist, because either one of those is going to get him listeners he would otherwise not get.
Okay.
It would have to have it would actually have to have drums if it was going to be an Alchemist.
All right. Well, here's the thing, man. You could get the beats from him, and then you could get someone to lay drums over the top of him.
A drum person. I would say Chumzilla.
Oh yeah.
I think because Chumzilla is great. We got a chance to talk to him, and he was like, I don't like adding weird stuff to people's voices. I like people with an interesting voice.
Mm-hmm.
Showcase the voice.
Oh man,
Chumzilla really showcases the voice of the people he works with.
Man, and he is painstaking on that mix, man. He gets everything just so. Love that dude.
Yep.
Crazily dope.
Chumzilla's John Doe. That's what I'm voting for.
Welcome to Mars.